Prize Picks, run your game when you want.
By the way, when I was doing the Guardians postgame shows, I remember after Game 4, shout out to a familiar friend of the show, Corey Crawford, who he was going bananas after Game 4.
Trust me, I was getting it too.
He sent me 10 texts.
Yeah.
And he was watching the show and he was in the chat like,
he sent me the clip when you mentioned him.
Yeah. It was funny because he was hot about Class A in that game, and he was right.
Was going absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
And then I told him, because we were stuck in traffic leaving the game.
Yeah.
And then I told him that he's given up more home runs and runs in the playoffs than he did in the entire regular season.
Insane.
And that sent him.
Oh
then he was over the edge.
Yeah.
That was it. He was over the edge.
Fired up that night. I don't blame him.
Yeah, I don't either. I disagreed with some of his takes. He was like, he's great against Pittsburgh. He's a regular season closer. He can't close against the great ones. He had a damn near perfect regular season, and he did it against a lot of good teams.
As you know.
He just melted on the big stage.
That was an emotional moment.
It was. And I let him vent.
Yeah.
Because that was me 25 years ago.
Yeah.
That was me. Hell, that was me 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's true. Go ahead, Mike. So what's the Guardians-related questions I know you had for us?
So they had their end-of-season wrap-up press conference yesterday, and there were a few things that came out. Zach Meisel tweeted a few of these things that I'll just read the list that he tweeted out, but this is from Zach. The Guardians intend to bring back the whole coaching staff unless someone else gets a promotion somewhere else. David Fry will meet with Dr. Keith Meister next week about his elbow. There is some mutual interest between the Guardians and free agents Shane Bieber, Matthew Boyd, Alex Cobb, and Austin Hedges. So before we get to the big question, any thoughts or comments on some of the things Zach put out there yesterday?
I had said to Zach on our show Monday, I said, could we talk Austin Hedges into retiring and being a member of the coaching staff? And he said that Hedges told him he wants to play 7-8 more years.
He never plays. I would too.
Yeah, that's like being a backup quarterback. It's the best job in sports.
Yeah,
being a backup catcher is the second best.
Plus, you need him in the clubhouse, not in the coaching room.
Yeah, someone asked that to me during the playoffs. They said, God, he's such a liability.
Yeah.
And can we make him a coach? That's exactly what I said. He then becomes a principal, not a substitute teacher. Right now, he's like a sub-teacher. Everybody loves coming into the classroom with a substitute teacher, but he's there every day. And I know he's a drain on you. What they need is more out of Bo Naylor.
When they were eliminated, the night they were eliminated, Austin was in the corner with about 4 or 5 players around him in the chairs, and they were just reminiscing. I wasn't listening to their conversation. You give them that moment. And it went on so long that finally one of the PR members went over there and was telling Austin, like, hey, they're all waiting for you. Can you just talk? So he went up and talked, and he went and sat back down. They may still be sitting in those chairs for all I know. Like, they were and that's what he means.
I'll answer your question, and then I really want to get your answer. I understand that each spot on the roster comes with great value. And I also understand that you really can't have a guy that's as close to an automatic out as there is in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, he's the worst hitter I've ever seen.
Well, that might be hyperbole.
I don't know if it is.
Miles Straw, anyone?
He's, at least Miles Straw can run the bases and give you something offensive.
I don't think he's the worst hitter I've ever seen. I'll say that he is a way below average hitter, and that he really is a drain on the production side.
Yeah.
But every player has value. Whether it's offense or defense, you weigh that. If he's terrible defensively, but he's so good offensively, you're doing an equation. Is the offense more than we're hurt on defense? And I do that with Austin Hedges. Is his intangible presence and chemistry and value to the cohesion of that clubhouse worth more than the drain that he is offensively? He's a good defensive catcher, but with the defense comes the offense. And by the way, you can't DH for the catcher. I wish you could. So with all of that,
nice.
Listen, I would do it if I could.
You could bat the pitcher.
Well, in the playoffs, what I would have done if you could, and this is a moot point, I would have, because no pitcher was in the lineup for more than 3 games anyhow, I would have hit the pitcher ninth, DH'd for Naylor, And every time the pitcher spot comes in, you pinch hit for him.
Are you allowed to do that?
No, you're not.
I don't think
no,
you're allowed.
It's a rule. You can only DH for the pitcher.
I
I thought you could DH.
No, I wish to God you could. If you could,
yeah.
that's what I would have done.
I mean, think about the insanity of thinking about that for a second.
That's how bad it is.
What-
But
yeah.
so when I do the math,
Yeah.
and I've seen it up close. I know you've seen it up close. It's undeniable to me that what he adds to the team is greater than what he takes away from the team.
And you guys,
do you agree with
Yes.
that?
Yeah, and you guys are probably right. Okay, I'll grant you that. And I was calling for him to start in the playoffs
I know.
because
I
Naylor
know.
couldn't hit at all.
And then he got hot.
I do like Hedges' ability. You know, a lot of times we go, well, Bo Naylor's a good pitch framer. You know what I need in the playoffs? I need a catcher
That can keep
that's
the ball
going
in
to tell
front of you.
Emmanuel Clase, don't throw a freaking slider.
Yeah.
Bo Naylor's not going to do that. Austin Hedges will. The only problem is that because, like, if Austin Hedges were the backup catcher for the Yankees or the Dodgers, it's a little easier to deal with it.
That's why I
because
said
your
they need
only
more out of Bo
liability.
Naylor.
Yes.
That's why I said that. Like,
Right.
they need Bo Naylor to take a step. Not a year 2 to year 3 step.
Yeah.
They need him to take a year 2 to year 5 step.
They-
His brother did it.
Well, and then David Fry not being able to play catcher really hurt also because then in the playoffs you could have had Fry catch and
Yes.
Manzardo at DH, and it would have been
It
better
opens
for the
up
lineup.
other
But
things.
yes, ultimately they need Bo Naylor to pan out. But another part of it also is you're paying Austin Hedges $4 million. Unfortunately, with the Guardians, that's a meaningful amount of money. It shouldn't be. But
That's pocket change. I'm sorry. $4 million
Is it
even
though
for
for the
this
Guardians?
ownership, even for this ownership group. What he brings to the table,
yeah.
if he was to go to arbitration, it wouldn't work because that's not measurable in stats. But for guys that have spent a lot of time in clubhouses and dugouts, it's invaluable to those guys. I said last year, I know you saw it too, when I was at spring training, I asked every player off camera before we started our interviews, how's it being back? They all said the same thing.
Yeah.
Man, was it great to see Hedgie
All right.
again.
Well, then I'm fine. I'm fine with him being the backup, but I don't know. This is a broken record. They got to spend more money.
Well, yeah, well, that's
Yes.
where I want
Yes.
to
Gotta
go with
raise
this
the
conversation,
payroll.
Bull. Those were the tidbits from Zach. But
Yeah.
The big question I wanted to ask today is
Yeah.
they didn't talk about any specific players. They gave their general broad offseason plans. They talked about bringing a lot of guys back. Didn't necessarily mention making a splash move this offseason. The Guardians reached the ALCS in 2024. Do they need to make some sort of splash acquisition this offseason to get back to that level again in 2025?
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't just say, well, let's run it back and hope this year McKenzie stays healthy, and this year Williams stays healthy and pitches better, and McKenzie pitches better, and maybe Logan Allen. You can't just keep relying on the young guys. Zach made a great point when we were doing the show Monday. Like 2 years ago in 2022, the Guardians were the youngest team, and it was really cool. 3 years later, you don't want to be the youngest team anymore.
No.
You don't want to be the oldest team, but you don't want to be the young. You don't want to every year be the youngest team. You have to have some veteran presence. We saw that when they added Lane Thomas and Alex Cobb and Matthew Boyd, and those veteran presences made a difference. They need more of that, but they have to stop. They have to not shop in the bargain bin.
Yeah, it can't be Mike Zunino and Josh Bell.
No,
that won't
it's
count
gotta
as
be-
a splash.
Again, go trade for Brent Rooker. Go sign Teoscar Hernandez. Go sign Freddie Garcia.
I think they got to find pitching.
Well,
over
Freddie
hitting.
Garcia. He's
I,
a free agent.
I think you can't. I mean, number one, I don't know
Yeah.
that Bieber's even coming back, and if he does, he's not coming back till middle of the
season.
year.
I think it'll be June, and I think he's coming back to the Guardians.
I don't know.
But is that if they're only going to raise the payroll a little bit, is that money well spent?
I don't think it's going to be much money, sadly, for Shane.
But wouldn't a big market team be willing to pay him more?
Yes.
Are you gonna? Yeah, but what bet are you gonna make? Are you gonna make more than a 1-year bet?
No, but like the Dodgers, let's say what do you think the Guardians would be willing to offer him for 1 year?
I think it'd be a 1+1
Okay, let's say
With
it's
their
1+1.
option.
with the
But
team.
the
Right
Dodgers-
now I'd be willing to pay him more as
But
long
now
as
the
I have the
Dodgers
option to
could
get out of
say,
it.
well, we'll give you $20 million a year.
Well, that would be insane.
But it's meaningless to them.
and
That,
he wants
you know,
to be in Southern California.
I know he does. I know
So-
he wants to be in California.
The Dodgers could give him a 2-year, $30 million deal.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think the Guardians would be willing to go that high.
right.
I I don't know. I could be wrong. I've asked a number of people, like, how do you see this playing out? And they all said with a level of certainty that surprised me that was such a slam dunk. But they said,
we'll see.
He's got to come back to Cleveland.
But they've got to get a pitcher that's ready.
It's ready to go, and it
you
can't
need
be
a legitimate starting pitcher.
It can't be Alex Cobb. Like
No. That ship.
He's old.
He served his purpose.
Yeah.
Matthew Boyd.
I think it could be Matthew Boyd.
Fine bringing him, but you need somebody better. Bring Matthew Boyd and
yes.
You need a guy who's a top of the not necessarily a number one, but a top of the rotation type of guy.
I agree.
I wouldn't be surprised if another team pays Boyd more than they're willing to go.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know how much you really want to invest in Matthew Boyd.
No.
Like, he was great
No,
this
if I
year,
could
but he's-
re-sign him for $5 million,
I think he'd probably get more than that.
He'll get more than that somewhere else.
Yeah, he didn't pitch a lot, though.
Doesn't matter.
Well,
he
look
has
what's out there, though. Look what's out there, and look what some of these guys are making and what they're producing.
I don't know. All I know is
Look,
the
Lloyd had
Guardians.
some good moments,
The
man.
Guardians' payroll has to go up 30, 40 million. Otherwise,
You know what I think we haven't talked about, and I think this is a huge problem moving forward, and what they're going to do about it is going to. I think we're all going to watch very carefully. Emmanuel Clase's broken, guys. His psyche.
Yeah.
When you go home and you start live streaming your plaques,
Yeah.
that's a problem. And I know
Well, plus nothing he does in the regular season is going to matter to anybody.
No,
next
now
year.
we want to see.
Yeah.
Well, that's great, but your ERA in the playoffs is 11.
Yeah,
That's right.
But he did come back in the last game, and he blew
did,
through
that helped.
Stanton and Judge, and all he did was throw cutters, and he hit spots, and
Right.
he was terrific in that last appearance.
But he's not going to get the love next year that he got.
I mean,
this
I
year.
will just remind you, they shopped him last offseason. So
Yeah.
what does that tell you?
Yeah.
They might shop Jimenez too. I mean, Jimenez is still making no money.
said
His
that.
contract in a couple of years is a disaster for them right now if his play doesn't improve offensively.
I don't know that you can move Jimenez now because you don't know for sure if Bazana, you don't know what you have in Bazana.
Yeah,
Jason,
way
but
too early in the game for that.
Wait, they got 3 years coming up where he's getting over $20 million a year, and he's a below-average hitter.
And maybe you move him because you throw Tyler Freeman in there until Bazana's ready. But, we were talking when they drafted Bazana, we were always of the assumption that Rocchio's out, Jimenez moves to short, and Bazana goes to second. I don't know. Maybe Jimenez is
I'm
the one that they
not
move.
totally buying into Rocchio either, even though
I'm
he had
not
a nice
either.
postseason,
I'm
but-
not
I'm not either, but guys, I think he took a major step in his career arc by
Sure.
proving that the next season, I would think the regular season to him is going to feel like a softball picnic
Oh, yeah,
on a
sure.
Sunday.
You'd think.
He stepped up in a major way at the plate.
Yeah.
And it came from that was the most unexpected spot. I mean, the only way I'd be more surprised is if Austin Hedges did that. Rocchio was a disaster in the regular season at the plate. For
No,
most
he did
of
a
the
nice
season.
job, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Naylor this year. He's got 1 year left. They're not going to extend
long-term
him.
future is very cloudy here.
Yes.
I don't see why they would bring him back.
And he's not going to get a big contract from anybody because
I think he's going to get more than you think because his offensive numbers are in that category where guys get paid.
But he is a one-dimensional player.
Fact.
And he has the body type that doesn't traditionally age well.
No, I agree with that.
So I don't know, but I
He's a
think it's
long-term
time for
DH.
Manzardo.
He's not going to get an 8-year deal, but I think he's going to get a 3 or 4 with a big number behind it.
Well, I don't think he'll get it from here. I think
Manzardo's got to play
the
first
future of
base
the
next year. Enough with the DH.
I would buy that.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
It's going to be a fascinating offseason because
I think we
we
all
just
agree
talked
on
about a
this.
lot of different things.
We all agree on this. You got to spend more money. You have to.
That's it.
After last year, when Major League Baseball got Texas and Arizona, like it was a ratings disaster for them. It was not a popular World Series.
Right.
Everybody at the MLB offices in New York were rooting for one thing: give me a 1 and a 1 or a 1 and a 2. And by that I mean either a Yankees Mets or a Yankees Dodgers. They got it. They got exactly what they wanted.
Yeah.
And
Which I don't blame them. If I ran baseball, I'd want it too.
But you have to admit it's a conflict of interest that the people that are going to decide whether there is a spending limit on the sport are also wildly benefiting when 1 and 2 get in.
Sure. Yeah, but that's already been decided before this year.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's in the soup.
They suppressed the payroll last year because of the uncertain television agreement.
Well, that was their excuse.
They wound. Yeah, I know.
Hey,
but I'm
can you
saying
make some sense to me of where the games are going to be next year? Because fans, I'm sure, have questions
I don't
too.
think we know yet.
I thought they had decided that MLB is going.
MLB's taking over.
But I read something where it said Cleveland fans are the winner in this, that their games, they're going to get to see all of their games.
That's right.
And they made it sound like they were going to be on a free channel.
MLB's trying to do something. MLB wants control of all the games.
I know they do. And the digital
and
rights.
slowly they're getting it back.
Right.
I don't know how long it'll take for the teams that they are already going to have, like the Guardians. I don't know that there's an answer to that yet. Maybe as we get into the winter meetings and that, some of that will become clear. But the point I was making earlier is they suppressed the payroll because they weren't sure about the TV money and how much TV money they were going to get. And they wound up getting quite a bit of it, never spent it. They've got 6 playoff gates. That's big money. 6 revenue gates off the postseason. That's now coming in. Now, again, the TV money next year, I don't know if there's any. You know, I just don't know. I don't know that anybody knows the answer as to how much they're going to get for that. It's still too early in the game. But there should be money in the bank. There should be money in the bank.
I'm wondering, this is just a guess, I'm trying to put together what I know about TV and sports and how they come together. I know that there has been a return. I know in Phoenix with the NBA, there's been a movement to put games back on free TV, over-the-air, free broadcast TV. And here's the thinking there. The way you generate revenue then isn't through cable subscribership, it's through ad sales. And if Major League Baseball comes in and says, here's what we're going to do, we're going to control the production of the games, we're going to put them on an over-the-air free TV service, and we're going to take 50% of the ad sale revenue. I don't know what's going to happen
because more
there.
people are going to watch if it's
More people are going to watch. If you put them on Channel 3, and that's not a good example because we have NBC programming.
Sure.
If you put them back on Channel 43.
43. That's exactly what I was going to say.
What revenue do you generate strictly through ad sales now? Will it match up to the number that they were able to reach through Bally's writing them a check and saying, we'll handle the profits?
Yeah.
Or the losses?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I don't know. I know you'll have a happier fan base.
I know the Suns owner was adamant about doing that in Phoenix with Suns games.
I think that they want to go more streaming than traditional.
Right.
But that's why it's a winner, because with this new system, you will be able, you can't right now.
You don't have access.
You can't watch the Guardians on the MLB app.
Right.
But now you'll be able to.
You absolutely will
which
be
is
able
huge.
To now. Yeah.
And
that
if
will
you had
drive money
YouTube TV, you couldn't watch the Guardians because they didn't have Bally's.
You're right.
And there's other cable services that didn't have Bally's. And now everybody, even if it's not on a free channel, everybody will at least have access to it, whatever system you have. Yeah.
Well, we'll see how it all works
good.
out. It's a changing landscape for sure. But the Guardians' future depends on how this shakes out financially, because you're dealing with a New York contract that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars with the TV contract there, and in other big markets. We'll never ever be able to compete with that. Ever.
No, but I think, to me, while yes, it's a negative certainly that teams can way outspend. I think I've always thought the bigger issue is that there needs to be a salary floor.
I agree with that,
because
that's
there's
the first step they could take.
There's at least penalties for going over.
Yes.
There's
you can
nothing.
Spend $50 million.
There's no penalty.
No.
In fact, you get benefits because small market team, you get this money.
Yep.
You're
still getting revenue share from the national TV dollars.
Right.
And you're making money. You're profitable.
Right.
So it's all about dollar cost, ROI, return on investment.
Yeah.
What's the Yankees' return on investment compared to the Guardians?
Right.
I'll guarantee you the Guardians' number is higher.
Which is crazy.
It's crazy, but they're probably more profitable on ROI, not in dollar numbers, but in return on investment. I would be willing to bet that the Dolan's return on investment is higher than Steinbrenner.
I've had people who have seen the books.
You have?
Yeah. I've talked to people who have seen the books, not who've seen all the books, who said, and they won't tell me what the numbers are. I can't get what the numbers are.
No, it's the most closely held secret in sports.
But I've been told that the small market owners, the Pittsburghs and the Oaklands, make a fortune.
I've been told that too.
Because again,
that's insane.
Here's the revenue streams. There's like 5 different. I wrote a story on this a few months ago. There's like 4 or 5 different revenue streams that the league funnels from the Yankees and the Dodgers to the Oaklands, the Tampas, the Clevelands. Last year the CBT tax was the highest it's ever been. That gets divvied up. But everyone, to your point, everyone keeps it secretive of how much of the pot each team gets. It's all shrouded in.
And you know what? I've always said this about it. There's always a reason for why we don't know something. And I remember, I was doing some research looking at old videos when the work stoppage happened back in '94. Mm-hmm. And I watched a 30-minute interview that they did on PBS with owners and agents and owners all in the same room. And they got into a heated argument. Charlie Rose was moderating the discussion. They got into a heated argument about the books. And someone said, it may have been Mike Lupica who was on on the panel, and he said, I'm going to ask this question directly to the owner on the panel. Why don't you want us to see the books? That's the problem. Because you know, and I know, and most smart fans know, we would look at the books and say, are you kidding me?
Yeah, 100%.
That's why that is the most closely guarded secret in sports. They don't want us to know. And as I said earlier, with the Browns and the Haslams and the fans, we're the shareholders ultimately.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with baseball. But we love the game so much that we've let them get away with this.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised the Players Union has let them get away with it for as long as they have. But there are huge numbers being made.
And I think it's funny because, like, our fans get mad at the Yankees and Dodgers. You shouldn't be mad at the Yankees and Dodgers. You should be mad at your owner.
They're exploiting the system. They're dumb if they don't.
And by the way, Jimmy Haslam spends more than any other owner in football. We don't complain about him spending money.
No, we don't. And what do we have to show for it?
Absolutely nothing. And I know this sounds counterintuitive. I've made this point 100 times. There is no worse relationship, in my opinion, between the Players Union and the owners than in baseball.
You're right.
It's the one sport without a cap. I actually think if they had a cap, it would solve a lot of the problems.
I agree with that.
I think
but they have to have a floor too.
And it would mechanically bring in a floor. And I think the players are being stubborn and they're being prideful in saying we'll never have a cap. Look at the power that we have. I think they're cutting off their nose to spite their face. I actually think the game would work better and everybody would make more money if they did have a cap. I know it sounds counterintuitive. I'm just telling you, the relationship is worse in baseball between players and owners than any other sport, and it's the one sport.
And historically, it has been.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, because the Baseball Players Union is the strongest union.
It is.
Of the sports unions. That's why.
I wish there was more transparency from the owners to the players, and I think that would lead to harmony. No secrets. When you're keeping a secret from me, what don't I know, and why don't you want me to know it? Okay, Mike.
All right, we got